And we are back once again. It's time for another episode of Talking Tilton with the Tilton Historical Society and Scuba's Place Internet Radio. Make sure you check us out at scubasplace.com. Up this week, we've got Conrad Ekstrom. Hey, Conrad, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fine. Doing fine.
That's what I like to hear. We're gonna be talking all about trains during the interview this week. And I've got to ask you right off the bat, how did you get into trains?
Well, I'll have to dust off the cobwebs of probably about 65 years. And I don't know, I think I first saw him downtown Tilton going by, and I think it was fascinating by them. That was, I want to say probably late 40s, early 50s.
All right.
I go back that far, and I saw what at the time I didn't know anything about it, but it was probably a name train called the Alouette,
okay,
which connected all the way up to Montreal, Canada via Woodsville, Wells River, Newport, Vermont, and then up into Canada. At that time, the line was connected between Plymouth and Woodsville. Of course, I didn't know about that then, but I saw this big silvery thing going across the crossing where Park Street meets Main Street.
Okay, yep.
And I thought that was the neatest thing ever.
You know, honestly, to tell you the truth, I remember playing in some of the trains right there at the depot when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s. And I was always fascinated. I've been on a couple of train rides. I think it was fun. You know, it was exciting. I love the history of it. Have you ever worked on the railroad?
No, unfortunately. I did want to do that one time when I was in later years in high school, but I got diverted to Keene State College for 4 years and off into that. And that sort of stoked the fires too, because I was a history major and did a lot of digging around in the railroads around the Keene area and stuff.
Okay. So in some of your research, and I know from what I've seen on Facebook, the Historical Society, I mean, you post a lot of items on there. So history is big with you when it comes to the railroad. So take me back, as far back as you've been, that has traced the railroad from Tilton, Franklin, White Mountains. I know you mentioned that you've got quite a bit of it too.
Yeah, well, it's on my number of my Facebook pages. I started one on the train wrecks of the Boston, Concord, and Montreal, which is the name of the line going through Tilton and went all the way from Concord to New Hampshire to Woodsville at one time. And it includes a lot of the wrecks, some here in Tilton and Franklin and further up the line. And one thing led to another, and digging out references on the internet, and then people joining the page, adding their information and posts, and it just grew from there to what I have now. And I sort of investigate a whole number of lines all across the state. One of my favorites is the one up in the Franconia Notch that ran up to the Profile House where the tramway is now, and I've done some exploring there along the line between Plymouth and Woodsville, along the northern, that's over in the Franklin area, and a lot of interesting things. And the purpose of my pages is to sort of draw people out, and their information, they add photos, and they're just invaluable to see.
Now, if somebody wants to get on one of these pages that you have created, how can they find it on Facebook?
Well, let's see. They could type in railroads, or you can do Boston and Maine. You can do the Northern Railroad of New Hampshire, Boston, Concord, and Montreal Railroad, and things will pop up on Facebook, and they will lead you to the pages. Then from on the pages, they have what they call an about section where you can click on it, and there'll be links to other pages. And I have roughly 40 pages, and they're all sort of linked together little bit by little bit. And you can essentially travel by train without leaving the comfort of an easy chair all over New Hampshire.
Well, there you go, and you don't even have to worry about spending any money either.
No, the coffee's hot, the popcorn's hot, and the view is tremendous.
I can only imagine. We're going to be coming up at the end of May this year, and I'm kind of excited because as many years as my family has lived in New Hampshire, we've never been up to the Cog Railway.
Oh, you've got to experience that.
We're going to hopefully do that this year. Last year with the pandemic and it blowing up, we didn't get a chance.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
We're really hoping. I think it should be a good time. So, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was going to say one memory of the Cog that I have back in, it's mid-'70s, and I had a motorcycle, rode it up to the base station and took the train up later afternoon. And I caught the last train down. And this is when you could sit on the back entryway where the steps are. Mm-hmm. And I was treated to probably one of the most gorgeous, easy to remember, always sunsets coming down the Cog Railway. And the steam, the noise was great, but just the sunset, that just, it was just totally awesome. You're basically almost a mile high.
Right.
And wow, just fantastic. Of course, I like the steam and the smoke and stuff anyway. But the sunset just put the icing on the cake. That's one of the memories of the Cog Railway. And of course, that goes back to, 1869-ish, in that area.
Oh, really? That far back?
Yeah, it's roughly, I keep telling the guys up there, you're 3 centuries old. Well, they've been in the 19th, 20th, now they're in the 21st. And it's probably the only old piece of railroading left anywhere around here in the Northeast, because that was connected to a line to Brenton Woods, where the hotels were. Mm-hmm. And used to be a big tourist attraction. Well, it still is, but more so back then because they didn't have the highways and stuff.
So when did the railroad actually get into Tilton, Franklin area?
Oh, let's see. There were differing times. The late 1840s, early 1850s. I don't have the exact date right at my fingertips, but it was a big event. It was everybody was going horse and buggy. They can go 5-10 miles an hour safely. And all of a sudden you have this conveyance that, get up to 30, 35, 40 miles an hour. And Concord is maybe an hour away instead of 5 or 6 hours away.
Right.
So that was a revolution. I'm sure people talked about, now I can go to Concord in a day and have dinner, shop, whatever, and come back on the train.
Right.
Back then, that was a big thing. Now it's automobile, and it's a half hour. So it's.
Sometimes I think about, going back to that time and wish we had a time machine that we could travel back to when things were just beginning, because I really think we could appreciate it more and understand where everything came from and what life was like around that time. I mean, the railroad was revolutionary. It brought a lot of things to Merrimack County. I mean, tons of stuff. What are some of the things that the railroad would bring in? I mean, we know lumber. Was coal big in New Hampshire?
They brought in coal for heating. There was a way to distribute mercantile goods. I'm sure the merchants in Tilton and Northfield were able to place orders via telegraph to, let's say, Boston, wherever the main merchants were, the distributors, and it would come up on the train. And if you tried to do that by wagon, you're probably talking maybe 3 weeks to a month. And if you order it, let's say on a Monday back then, you might get it in a week's time, which is, much faster.
Right.
That's what it was back then. Nowadays, it's, of course, a lot of it's by truck, and it's even faster. But back then, they carried pretty much everything.
Now, did they?
The mail at one point, the coal. One time in Tilton Northfield, there were a couple of dealers that were selling coal. I don't know when they stopped, but
right.
The environmental thing, I guess their customer base went down to a point where it wasn't worthwhile anymore.
So on top of them carrying everything in, did they start taking passengers right away, or was that something that happened maybe down the line a little bit?
I believe they started taking passengers right away because people wanted to ride the thing. I know over in Peterborough, their first train was a 2-car passenger train. I'm still looking for one for Tilton. I know the first Tilton depot was situated behind where the old Iona Bank building is today.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a parking lot now. And as far as I know, they were pretty much, they wanted to have free rides the first time out. Then, of course, after a while, they started charging fares.
Right.
And this sort of thing.
Well, I can kind of imagine, after a while they looked at the operating costs and said, hey, wait a minute, no more freebies.
Well, that was an introductory thing from what I could determine.
Okay.
And then it went to a paying thing. I know on some of the jump ahead of a few decades on the ski train, the fares were under $10 for Boston. So
really,
in today's money, it'd probably be maybe $50. I just as a comparison. But back then, It was relatively cheap, convenient, and nice and warm going up in the train, ski, and rest on the way back.
I'm sure. Man, that would be so much better than being out in the horse and buggy. You always need that heat because New England winters are nothing to shake a stick at, that's for sure. So the first train depot in Tilton, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it was a small wooden affair. Let's see, I can't give you exact dimensions, but I know it had 2 large windows on the west side, about 3 and a door on the south side, and the same on the other 2 sides. And it was just a very plain affair, situated, just behind where the Iona Saviour, the Citizens Bank is, or used to be. The bank building is still there. Bank is gone, but it's right in that general area. And then, of course, the second elaborate station that we had with the two peaks, as I call them, was just situated just a short distance to the west of where it was. And originally, everything was sort of small and plain, but once the trains got established, they found, it needs something a little more substantial.
Right. So how many depots were there in Tilton?
There was the first wooden one, and then there was the large one that was moved to Bosquen. And the third one, if you want to call it that, was just an open-air shelter right there near where there's a little walkway from Tilton School that comes down the hill. It was right on the south side of the tracks there. It was just a small, I think about 8 by 10 concrete shelter open on one side. And that didn't last but maybe a couple of years, and that was torn down, and that was it.
So the depot that's there now, how long has that been there?
That's the second one there.
Okay.
I've seen pictures of the first one. I don't have the age on that.
Okay.
But there was an original one, another one, and it's from the picture I've seen, it was just a little bit smaller. Had a on the track side had a small, not a porch, but a little roof comes out over the dock, for foul weather and stuff. And but that's the one there now is the second one. As far as maybe there was an early one, but I think that's the second, last one.
Okay, gotcha. How long did, like the coal trains last before they actually went to diesel?
Oh, the steam trains. The Boston and Maine started, I believe, and I might be wrong, in the late 40s, and it gathered momentum into the 50s. They had one last steam train run. I'm trying to think. It was over on the main line through Dover from Maine to Boston.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was in the later 50s. But I think by 1960, all the steam trains were gone, and it was totally diesel-powered.
Okay.
And it was environmental. It was cheaper, and when the steam train went, the railroad was able to retire a lot of buildings and facilities and not pay taxes on them and not maintain them, so they were able to save money that way.
I've only ever been on one steam train, and that was the one up at Clark's Trading Post. I love that thing, just the smell of it, the way it moved. That was totally cool.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
go ahead.
Nope, go ahead and finish up. I'll let you finish up on that one.
I was just going to say that's part of it, I believe, is built on an old logging railroad that used to go up through there. And what the Clarks have done, they got a nice situation there. The water tank up there came from the Franconia Paper Company.
Mm-hmm.
The covered bridge came from Vermont.
Oh,
they
wow.
dismantled it and put it in on their property across the river there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very well built. And I've got pictures of that on my Facebook page. I'll put a plug in for it. Wood engineering craftsmanship, railroad style. And it was basically dedicated towards wood trestles and bridges, covered bridges, that sort of thing that the railroad built. And there's some quite spectacular ones in there.
Now, the train that goes through Tilton right now, I mean, does it... I haven't seen it in years. Do they still move stuff back and forth, or is it just passenger now?
Well, see, the line is being used by from Lockmere up. It's used by two of the railroads that the Clarks own. What is it? The Winnipesaukee and Plymouth. I may have got that wrong. And the Hobo Railroad, and they don't move much freight. Basically a tourist operation.
Mm-hmm.
The New England Southern, which is part of the Vermont rail system, has started to move a little bit more freight up to Lockmere in that general area. They service the Quinn plant.
Okay.
With slurry cars, big white railroad cars, extremely heavy when they're full. And there's nothing dangerous, and they're not natural gas or anything. It's a slurry that they use up there at the plant.
Okay.
And that's about, right now, it's about every 3-4 months they get a delivery from I don't know where the slurry comes from, but anyway, it comes in from the south. And they bring it up, switch around at the empties, bring back the empties, and leave the loads, of course. And they're supposed to be doing some transloading of gravel on gravel trains running down through from Tilton to Boston. Right now, I was told they were hauling gravel in large pickup trucks down the interstate to Boston because they need it for their construction down there.
Right.
I think that's so expensive by truck, but I guess they're going to change that, put in some transloading facilities where they take it, dump it from the truck to the train, they load up a certain number of cars, and off they go. But, it's much cheaper that way with just one locomotive and 30 cars sort of thing.
I can only imagine. And of course, no train story would be complete without disasters, and I'm sure there are quite a few.
Well, on this particular line, there's been train accidents, from maybe bad signaling, maybe a broken rail, trains missing a signal or misinterpreting an order. There used to be a lot of stations used to have similar names. I like Lockmere used to be East Tilton. And the railroad changed a lot of these because what was happening, people were getting the names confused, and the trains were in the wrong spot, and occasionally what they had a cornfield meet, which means both the locomotives came together. One notorious spot is the bridge right by the Northfield Freight Station.
Okay.
On my Facebook page, Train Wrecks of the Boston, Concord, and Montreal, there are many images of several train accidents right there at the bridge, and I just kind of wondered what happened. Some of the pictures show there where two locomotives collided with each other. So
I was looking.
I don't know the cause of it, but somebody goofed in big style. I mean, the cars were in the river, the locomotives were destroyed. I don't know the fatality numbers, but they could have been substantial there.
I know I was looking, at the pictures because I was getting some ready for the video to go along with this, and I was looking at some of the train accidents, and I can't picture what it was like back then. I mean, thousands of people standing around trying to figure out how they're going to get this out of the river. How would they even do that? I mean, did they have a crane, or how would they even make that work?
What they had back, well, I still do. They have large cranes right on the rails, a wrecking crane, and they probably dispatched a train from Concord and probably a train from Woodsville, because once there was a wreck right there at the bridge in Northfield. Mm-hmm. Well, the only way by rail is from Woodsville. Well, maybe at the time they had a line along from Rochester up to Lakeport, and they might have had a crane come up through that way and have one on each end, because the locomotives in the pictures that you saw were they were basically scrap.
Yeah, they were.
I don't think you could have made much out of them other than melt them down for teapots and stuff after the accident.
So what do you think the most memorable train disaster in the area was?
Probably up in New Hampton along Long Pond. Here again, I believe two trains came together in a cornfield meet where they ran together, and a number of fatalities. One of them was a important businessman up in the area, and I forgot the gentleman's name. Another one, a spectacular one, there was a fire on the covered bridge at Bridgewater, just south of Plymouth, and that was an accident there. The train collision caused the bridge to burn down, and everything landed on the ice.
Wow.
There was quite a thing. I think there were some fatalities there too. I don't have the exact details right at hand, but it was put the line out of commission for a few months.
I can only imagine. Now, have you walked along the tracks? Have you found anything railroad related, laying just out in the open? Anything along that line?
Over in one of my what I call boots on the ground, over in the Guild area along what they call the Concord and Claremont, I found some concrete structures, some signal boxes, occasional spike and fish plate which attached the rail to the ties, little things like that. Nothing major.
Right.
The rails and most of the ties have been removed long ago for rail trails and such, which is a good use for the old road beds, because they're very well graded. Us older folks can pedal our bicycles up and down very easily.
Mm-hmm. Been there. I definitely understand that. And there's some good scenery, too, so you really can't complain at all.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And, I mean, you hate to see the things go to waste because it is kind of a part of history. And speaking about that, and I know other than, like, the railroad tracks themselves, is there much history still around that kind of gives you an idea of what it was like, or maybe things that they went through, or some of the trains, or anything like that? Tilton, Northfield, Winnipesaukee area?
Well, there's the train rides out of the Weirs, Meredith, up in Lincoln, both at the Hobo and at the Clarks. To give you an idea of the old-time railroading.
That would be pretty cool.
Let's see, there's Conway Scenic, of course. And there's some over in Maine. Some of the old narrow gauge lines have been restored. There's one in particular, the WWF Wiscasset, Waterville, I might have that wrong, and Farmington.
Okay.
They've been rebuilding that, and they've had great success and great patronage by the public.
Hey, who doesn't want to bring back history? That's for sure. I mean, can you...
There's some history around here and there, and unfortunately, New Hampshire has only lines on its western border, up the center, and along the eastern border with the New Hampshire North Coast Railroad, which is basically just hauling gravel to Boston. And Boston has been built with New Hampshire gravel.
That is pretty cool. That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I'm learning something new. I really am on this. So one thing I do have to ask you is, what's a good train memory for you? Train ride, something you've found, something you've been on, somebody you've talked to. What's a good, really good memory that you have?
Yeah. Back in the late 50s, early 60s, before the Boston and Maine discontinued passenger service, riding the train to Boston from Tilton and down, and enjoyed it immensely. My grandmother and brother and sister went down, and then went down to things like the Ice Capades, the rodeo. Let's see, Ice Follies come to mind, and the circus down in Boston, which they no longer, the Ringling Brothers discontinued for some reason, and always enjoyed that. It was like 4 times every year. Loved it until they discontinued, and we didn't have access to transportation, so. Well, that's the way it goes.
Yep, that's definitely the way it goes. Well, anything else you want to add as we get set to close out the interview today?
No, enjoyed it, and hope you've I've answered your questions and found out a few things new, and that sort of thing.
I definitely have. I want to thank you once again, Conrad Ekstrom, for coming on and just talking about the trains, a little bit of history in Tilton. And, of course, we enjoy doing the episodes of Talking Tilton with the Tilton Historical Society. And, of course, Scuba's Place Internet Radio. And, again, you can find Conrad up on Facebook. You can see the pictures of the trains and some of the other items up there as well. I know I found it pretty fascinating. So, again, thank you, my friend. I definitely do appreciate it.
Yep, and if anybody gets on the Facebook pages, during the night you can travel from southern New Hampshire all the way to the Canadian border without leaving your chair.
It's going to be one heck of a ride.
Enjoy it.
I love it. All right, thank you, sir. I'll talk to you soon. You've been listening to Talking Tilton with the Tilton Historical Society and Scuba's Place Internet Radio. Check us out, scubasplace.com. We'll be back in May for another interview. We'll see you then.